I think Bazgayev sounds better, so I'm gonna say Bazgayev. Okay. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ellie if you've never been here before, and on this channel I upload whatever I want. This is actually my second attempt at filming this because I realized when I was about 10 minutes into the video that I keep staring at the viewfinder, and that's not good. When I film with my camera, it's a little bit easier to kind of get away with looking at the viewfinder because my viewfinder is above the lens, but I'm filming with my husband's camera right now and the viewfinder is a little bit off to the side. So I'm gonna try my hardest not to do that because it would bother me in editing, I already know. So then it would probably bother other people watching the video. Another disclaimer, I'm hoping the audio isn't too bad. I am filming in our empty master bedroom. It's empty right now because we are doing renovations, and so things are gonna get very dusty and dirty very fast, so we moved into our spare bedroom. But I wanted to film in here because I wanted just a clean slate background, but the audio is probably echoey. I'm trying to counteract that by filming on my husband's camera because he does have an external microphone, so I'm hoping that the microphone is somewhat offsetting the echo. But the echo isn't too bad, at least in my ears right now, but it is what it is. All right, let's get started. Today's video is going to be my July wrap up and August TBR, which my August TBR I'm gonna need some help with finishing out. So stay tuned for that portion of the video because I'm gonna need your help in the comments. But let's get started with the books that I read in July. July was actually a very exciting month for me reading wise because I finished my Goodreads goal. I set my Goodreads goal to 32 books for the year of 2025 because I read 31 in 2024. I've said this in multiple book videos of mine, but I have just kind of had this tradition since I was in college of updating my Goodreads goal to just be one more than the previous year. I don't want to push myself too much, but I know if I can read this much in the previous year, what's one more, you know? So that's kind of the reasoning behind that. Currently, I am at 35 books read. So we know for sure that the 2026 Goodreads goal is going to be at least 36, but it's obviously going to be way more because we are only in August. But let's start with the first book that I read in July. The first book that I read in July was actually Verity by Colleen Hoover, and I read this book, I read the majority of it in under 24 hours. This book is about a struggling writer who is really just going through a lot in her life, but also she is facing eviction, and she has an interesting meetup with this guy named Jeremy. I won't go into too many details about that because you should read it for yourself. But basically, she has this meetup with this guy, and they find out that they actually have a meeting together. So they see each other at the meeting, and essentially, the guy, Jeremy, is trying to find another author to complete his wife, Verity, who is also an author, to complete her series. She was involved in an accident, and she's very successful, so her fans are waiting for the rest of the series, and they want the series to be finished out. Lowen accepts the offer, and the story just starts there, basically. It gets very creepy, very fast. I ended up rating Verity 5 stars. I understand the criticism for Colleen Hoover and her writing. I get it, trust me. I read It Ends With Us, I read It Starts With Us, and now that I've read Verity, I have to say, we all have our taste in writing, but one thing we all can agree on for Colleen Hoover is that she writes in a very gripping way. She writes in a way that I feel is very accessible to readers who are just beginning. It might not be the most beautiful, flowery writing. You might not get quotes out of her books, but they are very easy to read, and I think that's why a lot of people enjoy them. And I am all for people joining the book community at any point in their life with any book. A lot of people, frankly, are just going to start with Colleen Hoover because she is so popular. So we have to give her that. And Verity is no exception. It was so easy to read, so fast-paced, and it was so hard to put down. Some of the things are a little hard to stomach because you're it's just so creepy. But I have to say, based off of vibes alone, I rated it 5 stars. Thrillers, for me, I feel like are pretty easy to rate 5 stars. Like, you're gonna get a 5 stars pretty easily out of me. I also haven't read as many thrillers as I have this year. So I feel like the more that I go on, I might be a little bit more critical, but currently at the point that I'm at, I'm gonna rate Verity 5 stars. Like, I think it was just so creepy. It was very creepy. Also, we read it for my friend Anna's book club. It just had like so much discussion. Someone mentioned something about Jeremy himself, like this theory that they had, and it honestly shook me. It made me want to like rethink everything I just read. Very interesting. Also, the movie coming out, the casting is amazing. You're telling me they have Dakota Johnson and Anne Hathaway in it? Like, come on, guys. Started off July with a bang for sure. The second book that I read in July was actually a continuation of a book that I started reading in June. This is Iron Flame, of course, by Rebecca Yarros. This is the second book in the Empyrean series. It follows the first book, Fourth Wing. I started this in June and I finished it on July 20th, meaning the rest of these books that I'm about to talk to you about that I read in July, I read after July 20th. So I feel like if I finished this earlier, if there wasn't so much in this, I probably could have read like 8 books in July, but because this took most of the month, I only had like 11 days to finish other books after. So I ended up rating Iron Flame 4.5 stars. On Goodreads, I think I rounded up to a 5 just because I love the series. I love the series so much. Before I go into that, I can't really tell you too much about the plot just because it is the second book in a series, and the way that Fourth Wing ends is how this book begins. So if I tell you that, it'll spoil Fourth Wing. So I'm gonna kind of give the like vibe of Fourth Wing, and then you'll know what Iron Flame was about. But basically in Fourth Wing, we are introduced to this dragon rider world and this war college called Basgiath. Also, I pronounce things way differently than they're probably supposed to be announced. I haven't listened to any audiobook of this. I think eventually I would like to listen to the graphic audios because I've heard they're just so good, but I read these with my own eyeballs. So the way that I pronounce things are just the way that I sounded them out in my head. I say Basgiath. I've heard people say Basgiath. I think Basgiath sounds better, so I'm gonna say Basgiath. Okay? But we're introduced to Violet and all of her friends that she meets. We're introduced to Xaden. We're introduced to Xaden and all of the dragons and all of their signets, and we're just introduced to the world of dragon riding. Of course, with a war college in this world, there's going to be a lot of conflict, and so the conflict that Fourth Wing ends off with picks up immediately in Iron Flame. The reason why I didn't rate this 5 stars was because it is a very long book, which would be fine if the first quarter, first third wasn't so slow. I thought that the first part of this was pretty slow, and I was only able to get through it because I love the character so much. About 70% of the way through is when I started to get those Fourth Wing vibes, which like Fourth Wing was a page turner from the beginning. I loved Fourth Wing from the first page, and that giddiness just carried through the entire book, and I honestly didn't get that feeling until about 70% of the way through this. So for that reason, I just couldn't give it a 5 stars. If Fourth Wing deserved a 5 star and this one didn't hold up as much, I couldn't. But I don't understand why people hate this. A lot of people hate Iron Flame, and it caused them to not read Onyx Storm. I enjoyed this still, and I'm so excited to read Onyx Storm. This may not have been as good as Fourth Wing, but it wasn't bad. The way that it ended, it needs to be fixed. It needs to be fixed in Onyx Storm. That's all I can say. The third book that I read in July was Save Me, Kurt Cobain by Jenny Manzer. I actually read this for my Tackling the TBR series. I know, I'm very behind on that series, you guys. I haven't uploaded in a month, and when I get into my August TBR, you will see that I'm gonna try to reconcile a little bit, but without giving away too much of this, because I'm gonna go in depth talking about it in my Tackling the TBR episode that comes out next. but this book is about a teenager who is going through a lot. Her mom goes missing when she is very young. She kind of copes with listening to music, specifically Nirvana, and one day on a trip she meets somebody who kind of changes the trajectory of her life. So that's all I'm gonna say. I don't want to spoil it because honestly, it kind of shocked me when I came to that point, but I rated this 3 stars. I really liked the beginning, actually. I think if I read this as a teenager, I probably would have rated it higher. It is definitely a YA novel, just putting that out there. So if you like to read YA, or if you are a younger person who watches my videos, I would recommend this, honestly. It's a nice little like coming of age story. I liked the beginning, but the turn that it took, I won't say too much on, honestly shocked me. And it kind of went in a direction that I just wasn't sure that I liked. I don't know, something about it. But the writing in this is actually very well done. I loved it. And this is also one of the first and maybe only books that I've read that is more character-based than plot-based, at least in my opinion. And I actually kind of liked that. It makes you learn more about the characters, and honestly, the characters that you might not typically like in another story, they kind of grow on you because you spend so much time with them and their inner monologue. So, rated this 3 stars. It was just kind of middle of the road. It wasn't amazing, but it also wasn't bad for what it was. So, also a very short read. The next book that I read, I actually listened to. This is Don't Let Him In by Lisa Jewell. If you keep up with my videos, you would know that in May, I read my first Lisa Jewell, which was None of This Is True. I rated that 5 stars. That was like a crazy thriller, and it really put me on to Lisa Jewell and her writing. But when she came out with her new release, when did this one come out? In June, actually. So I read this book pretty much a month after it came out, but I rated this one 4 stars. It was confusing at first, and I think part of it could be because I was listening to the audiobook, and the audiobook narrator would not read or announce everything. So she would say chapter 4, but if you actually look at like what the chapter title is, I listened to it on Spotify also, by the way, but when you actually look at what the chapter title is, it says chapter 4, 4 years earlier, and she wouldn't read that part. So if there was a part where I didn't check every chapter and I was just listening, I wouldn't know if it was in the past or if it was in the present. Eventually you catch on to the story and you don't really need to like be told the timeline because you just know what's going on. But when you don't realize that in the first chunk of the book, like I think like the first 30%, I was a little bit confused because there was so many characters and it was hard to keep up. But I think overall I would probably still rate it 4, 4.5, even if I read it physically. But I do think either having the audiobook announce the timeline or reading it physically, I think it would make the experience a little bit better for me. Let me actually read the synopsis because I don't want to spoil anything, especially for this one. I feel like this one could be very easily spoiled, but 3 women are connected by one man in this kaleidoscopic thriller. He's the perfect man, it's a perfect lie. Nina Swan is intrigued when she received a condolence card from Nick Radcliffe, an old friend of her late husband, who was looking to connect after her husband's unexpected death. Nick is a man of substance and good taste. He has a smile that could melt the coldest heart and a knack for putting others at ease. But to Nina's adult daughter, Ash, Nick seems too slick, too polished, too good to be true. It goes on to say a little bit more, but there's another woman, Martha. Martha is a florist living in a neighboring town with her infant daughter and her devoted husband, Alistair. But lately, Alistair has been traveling more and more frequently for work, disappearing for days at a time. When Martha questions him about his frequent absences, he always has a legitimate explanation, but Martha can't share the feeling that something isn't right. Nina, Martha, and Ash are on a collision course with a shocking truth that is far darker than anyone could have imagined. All 3 are about to wish they had heeded the same warning. Don't let him in. So this one, once I got over the confusion, I was hooked, and it was very good. So 4 stars, very decent thriller. My recommendation would be to just read it physically. Just have to say. But the audiobook did have a full cast of characters, which was very nice. for my ADHD brain. The last book that I read in July, before we get into my August TBR, and I need your help, was The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. I actually borrowed this from the library. That's why it has that library look and feel. But I ended up rating this 4 stars, and so far I've rated it the highest out of my book club, which is shocking because I'm usually the harsher critic for romances. But this was my first Catherine Center, and I read this book in like 2 days. It was very good. The main girl character, actually main character in this book, because it's all from her perspective, is Hannah Brooks, and she is a bodyguard, which you wouldn't expect. Typically, bodyguards are men, and she's also like not a super like tall, big woman, but she actually gets this job where she has to be the bodyguard for Jack Stapleton, who is a movie star, and the story goes from there. It's fake dating, and it's just so cute. It's a closed-door romance, and I loved it. This was my first Catherine Center, and I'm very intrigued to read more by her. This was also my first immersive read, and let me tell you guys, changed my life. If you don't know what immersive reading is, it's basically when you listen to the audiobook and read physically, whether the physical book or on your Kindle, and you do so simultaneously. I had never done that before, but specifically for the readers who struggle with ADHD just in general, or if you struggle with starting a book. That is my problem. I have ADHD, I struggle with focusing on really anything, but reading is such a big hobby of mine and a love of mine that like once I get to a point in a book, it's all I want to do, and it's very easy for me to focus. But starting new books, that feeling before you get invested, like that time period before you get invested, you know the characters, you know the plot, and you want to continue reading, that is really hard for me. Just like sitting down with the book and the audiobook playing in my ears, it helps me to focus in the beginning of the book so much more. Like it was genuinely life-changing, you guys. I am already thinking about immersive reading next month. Hopefully that will be the case. Hopefully whatever books I end up reading, I can have the audiobook and the physical book, because genuinely, I think that is a big reason why I was able to start and read so much. I read the first quarter of this book in one sitting. Like from then on, I wanted to keep reading because I got so much further in the book to begin with. So I really, really liked the experience, and I feel like I picked a great book to immersive read with. It's hard for me to find an audiobook that I genuinely can focus with, but it's almost like it was so much easier to focus on what I was listening to because I had the words in front of me, but then it was also so much easier to focus on the words in front of me because it was being read to. So, absolutely love the experience, and I love this book. The only reason why I didn't rate it a 5-star was because I felt like it was missing something, which it is a pretty short book, so I feel like something at the beginning maybe could be added, or maybe a little bit more tension would have given me that 5-star feeling. All right, those are the 5 books that I read in July. Let's get into my August TBR, which actually is shorter than you're probably gonna think. So, July TBR, let's talk about it. I have my reading journal in front of me because a lot of what I choose to pick up is because of book club, it's because of my Tackling the TBR series, and it's because of the Buzzword Reading Challenge. Of course, I'm gonna mood read as well because like I don't want to deny myself that ability. So let's start with that actually, because the first 2 books on my August TBR actually have to do with mood reading. The first book that I have is Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This is the 3rd book in the Empyrean series, the 4th Wing series, and I can't really tell you what happens, but this picks up from whatever happens at the end of Iron Flame. So, because I just finished Iron Flame and the way that it ends, I was like, I have to get to this. I have to get to this. I have the ebook borrowed from Libby. You guys, I've been in line for that for so long, and I borrowed it. I should have just extended it because I borrowed it, and now I only have like 10 days left, but I'm gonna be gone all next week. I don't know what to do. I think I'm gonna have to return it and get back in line, which like it's fine because I have the physical book. but reading it on my Kindle was a whole different experience. So anyways, this copy is gorgeous. I bought this copy when it first came out, and you bet in 2027, when we get book 4, I'm gonna buy it immediately because the edges are just gorgeous and I love this series so much. This is definitely my mood read of the month for sure. The second book that I have on my August TBR is One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune. I've talked about this a little bit and I might have put it in my last TBR. Can't remember, guys, I'm so sorry. I honestly don't remember what I put on there and I didn't do my research and go back and check. But this needs to be read in August because it is definitely a summer book. It's in the title, One Golden Summer, and I want to read it so bad. I literally have FOMO and I know it's gonna be a 5-star. Like, there's no way that it's not. So I'm super, super excited to start reading this, and I'm hoping that there is some type of justice for the injustice of Every Summer After, which is the first book. It's not necessarily a series. They're interconnected standalones, but I feel like they are so interconnected that you should read Every Summer After before you get to One Golden Summer. But I'm so excited to read this. However, I'm gonna make this fit my Buzzword reading challenge. So let me find that spread in my reading journal because I have been doing very well with the challenge so far, and I'm gonna keep up with it. Like, we're over halfway through, like I'm gonna be able to do it. So for the Buzzword reading challenge, let's actually go back to July. Save Me Kurt Cobain that I read in July actually fits July's title prompt because it needs punctuation in it, and it's Save Me, comma, Kurt Cobain. So it actually fits. For the cover prompt, it needs to be technology. My current read right now, I don't have it with me. I probably should have grabbed it, but it's called Dot Wave by Mike A. Lancaster, I think. But basically that is about, I think I went over that one in my last wrap up in TBR. If you want more details on it, I definitely talked a lot more about it in that video, and I will talk a lot more about it in my next TBR episode because I am reading it for that episode. But basically it is about some dot wave file that these teenagers come across, and they have to investigate it, basically. But the reason why I picked that was because for the July cover prompt, it needs to have technology, and that's really the only book that I have on my physical TBR. Don't be looking too close at these, because you won't see these in my Tackling the TBR, okay? But out of my physical TBR, that's really the only book that had technology on the cover. So it also fits that I need to read it for my Tackling the TBR series, get it off the shelves. But for August, the cover prompt is that the book needs to have transportation on the cover. And I'm going to count that boat as transportation. Sue me. I feel like it's transportation, so I'm excited. I'm so excited to read this. I feel like I can binge this. So this will definitely be read very, very soon. Very soon. I'm so, so excited for this. This is where I need your guys' help, because on the topic of Buzzword reading, the title prompt for August needs to have the word with. With. It needs to have the word with in the title. And I have some idea of what I could do. I could literally just look up with on Libby. Whenever I don't have a book immediately in mind for the challenge that I've been thinking about for a while, I usually just go on Libby and type in that word and listen to an audiobook that has with in the title, or whatever the word is. But a lot of the times when I do that, I don't end up finding a book that I really want to read. So my first question for you, I'm gonna have you comment 2 things. So I need you to pay attention, okay? You can comment twice, or you can put both answers in one comment. But the first thing I need you to comment down below is a recommendation of a book that you loved that has the word with in the title. It could be a book that you loved or a book that you are really, really interested in. And I'm hoping that at least one person comments, because you guys, I need help. Like, I need a book for August. We have started August. Literally, look at my reading journal. I'm caught up through August. I need a title for August. So please let me know in the comments. That's the first thing. The other thing is that I haven't gone to book club yet. We're gonna go about the second week of August. So not this week, but not this upcoming week, but next week we're gonna be meeting. And because we just read a romance, The Bodyguard, we're probably gonna be reading a thriller. So drop some thriller recommendations in the comments. And if it's one I haven't read, I'm gonna read the synopsis and then maybe I'll bring it up at book club and it's one that we can read because I already know Anna's gonna be asking for recommendations for what we should read next, and it's gonna be a thriller. So this video will definitely go up before we meet. So please, 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 those are the two things I need you to comment: a book title with the word with in it and a thriller recommendation. And that's my August TBR. It's only 4 books: Onyx Storm, One Golden Summer, and the 2 recommendations that I'm asking from you. Hopefully I read more than that, but this upcoming week I'm going to be gone at my summer camp, which in my next video that you're gonna watch after this one, I'm gonna go into depth into like what I'm talking about my summer camp. So if you're interested, please go check that out. I'm gonna be filming a pack with me, but because I'm gonna be gone all week, I'm not going to be reading for an entire week of August. So I kind of wanna just stick to the 4, and then if I read all of those, then I will just have time to mood read. And when I mood read, I can pick off of my lovely TBR cart here. These are all of the books that I've purchased since I started my Tackling TBR series, so they don't count for that, minus the ones that I've read before, like Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, and others. Hopefully I do have time at the end of August to mood read, but that is going to be all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you like me, then subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it, and I'd love to have you around. Don't forget to comment what I ask you to comment. Please, I need your help. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.